Logitech Brio or codec? Cool, got it. All right. Hold on a second. Check. Yeah, we're good now. Cool. All right, I'm gonna hit my music again. Here, try this again. You got the sound effects up?
Sound effects are up, yeah.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
I'm your huckleberry.
Every year I set this league up. Every year, and I never win. This was the year.
It's Everything Fantasy Nation. Your comments, your questions, the voice of the fan. All right, let's try that again. Welcome into Everything Fantasy Nation. Week number 3 in the NFL. Football season just seems to sneak up on you and fly each and every week. Thanks for joining us. It only took me 1 week to run off 3 people. We got Mike on a Skype. He's joining us that way. Wookie, what's happening, buddy?
Oh, just another day, just ready for week 3 to get going here. Like you said, it comes so fast now because you got Thursdays, you got Sunday, Monday. It's you get football like every day of the week now.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Fredo as well. Okay. Thank you all for joining us here at EBSN Online. We're all about being interactive. So this show is about you guys. We want your comments, your questions on your fantasy football for week number 3, who to start, who to sit, who to pick up, all that sort of stuff. Thanks for Gary Robinson and producer G for checking in. Pops is in here so far as well, and welcome everybody in. So here we are, week number 3, I think we can kind of start with week number 2 and where we are at as far as the best performances from this week. We had Fitzmagic again. And Mr. Wookie, what was your biggest takeaway here from week number 2 in fantasy football?
My biggest one, honestly, was Todd Gurley. You really just saw how their kicker went out early, so he ended up with 2-point conversions as well. That added an extra 4 points onto his total. He ended up with 32.3 in standard, which that's insane for a running. He outscored my quarterback, which you're getting a running back outscoring your quarterback. That's a good week.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And, as I look at some of these big weeks, Stephon Diggs, 9 catches, finally 128 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion. And, you got Todd Gurley, who really hasn't gotten going yet and has been living off of touchdowns. It's incredible.
Yep, and he did it on 42 yards rushing, 31. He had 73 total yards and 32 points. So, yeah, the touchdown dependent, but he's going to get them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess another one that's kind of a surprise out in San Francisco, Matt Breida, 138 rushing yards, 21 receiving yards. That's your guy, right, Fredo?
That's who I picked in the Yeah, that's who I picked in the last, I think the last or next to last round of our draft.
Okay, nice, very good. Those are the big performances, except for you're good. Some guy named Patrick Mahomes, maybe.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a quarter? And I guess the answer is no. There's never been a quarterback that has been any better than Patrick Mahomes at this point to get his season going. So, as we transition back over to this week a little bit, I got to think that, who are the best matchups this week for you, Mike, as you go into looking at week number 3 here?
Well, you just touched on one. Pat Mahomes playing at home against San Francisco. He started off, he has 10 touchdowns, no interceptions yet through 2 weeks. That's the most ever in NFL history. It's kind of like it reminds you of seeing when Aaron Rodgers came out after sitting on the bench for, 4 years behind Brett Favre. This guy sits for 1 year, comes out, and it's like he's in the perfect offense with Andy Reid. He has Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, Kelsey, Sammy Watkins. He just has so many weapons around him. This guy's going to have a crazy season.
No, I totally agree. And I think as we get going this week as well, the injuries are going to be one of the big things to keep an eye on as well. There's a lot of guys that are kind of questionable. We're not quite sure at this point. It's tough at this day on Thursday. The only one we know for sure this week is Jarvis Landry's playing tonight. And speaking of which, my Cleveland Browns once again pulled, losing from the jaws of victory and didn't get it done against the New Orleans Saints. But I'm feeling a W. 1-32 in 1 or 1-34 in 1, whatever it is now. This team's winning tonight against the New York Football Jets.
Even take that out of the equation. We traded Josh Gordon to the New England Patriots.
I forgot about that.
We didn't even bring that part up. We traded him for a 5th-round pick, and we're going to send a 7th back with him.
Well, since you mentioned that, too, let's talk about the impact that's going to have on both these teams, I think. When you're talking about the Browns, you're going to talk about Antonio Callaway at this point. You look at Todd Haley and what he wants to do on offense, and this guy is Antonio Brown, essentially, a young Antonio Brown. So we'll see what he can do. He's going to have to fight for some time with Rashard Hollywood Higgins. Jarvis Landry, we'll see what his health's like. Duke Johnson, you're going to want to see get a few more looks now, I think. Hopefully Haley can find a way to utilize him a little bit more. And I think when you look at the Patriots side of it, Gordon's going to, if he can do nothing else this week except for run the 9, and just spread the field a little bit so that underneath stuff's there, I think the biggest beneficiary is really going to be James White and potentially Kevin Hogan at this point.
Yeah, and you got to remember you also have Edelman coming back after week 4, and players typically don't do too hot right when they come back off suspension, but when you have Tom Brady throwing you the ball and you add in Edelman and Josh Gordon at around the same time, I mean, if you have Tom Brady right now, I think you're feeling pretty good about it.
No, I think you are too. What do you got there, Fredo?
I was just going to say that Gordon's probably the most physically gifted receiver that Brady will be playing with since he had Randy Moss.
And that was like a 34-year-old Randy Moss, wasn't it? Or like 33, something like that?
Moss.
No, I mean, this isn't exactly a young, Josh Gordon at this point either. The guy hasn't played in basically 4 years, and I know he's got the physical prowess, but what has he really done on the field? To me, if you can get a 5th-round draft pick for him, then that's absolutely fabulous, I think, compared to just cutting him, which was the other option. So I think that kind of sums up what you're looking at as far as how it's going to affect both the Browns and the New England Patriots. Again, you're watching at EBSN Online. Make sure you're commenting or questions in the comments at EBSN Online, both on Twitter and also do it on here on Facebook at EBSN Online. Starts, sits, waiver wire pickups, all that stuff. And we're also going to be starting to get into next week a little bit of NHL. Fantasy NHL's coming up. Fantasy basketball's coming up. And let me check on my fantasy golf team here on DraftKings. Let's see. A $3 contest. And out of 12,000 people, I am currently sitting 64th. $40. So far, so good.
Not bad.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid.
I got Roars going, TW, Matsu, Frankie Molinari, Gary Woodland, and Kyle Stanley. So that's my fantasy golf team for this week, which kind of sucks because this is the last week on the tour stop. And, I like playing golf. So, okay. So let's see what else is going on here on Facebook. Any big waiver claims this week for you, Mike?
My biggest one this week, unfortunately, I didn't get him, but I wanted Gio. With Joe Mixon out a couple weeks, you got him this week playing Carolina. I think Gio Bernard's going to have a big week. Mm-hmm. Another one I liked was Will Dissly. I said it last week, this Seattle's tight end. Seattle's kind of like a dumpster fire right now, and he's kind of like that safety blanket for Russell Wilson. And one other one, if he's still available out there, I like Antonio Callaway, like we just talked about. I mean, stash him, see what you can do with him. He caught that 47-yard pass from Tyrod to tie the game up last week. So I think he'll have a good chance.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of those. Obviously, Gio Bernard with Joe Mixon, he's going to be out for about 4 weeks, it looks like. You got Keelan Cole. I mean, Fredo, what do you think about Keelan Cole? Is this a guy that you think has enough upside, and especially towards the end of the year? I mean, do you like him or D.D. Westbrook better?
I think I like Cole better.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like he showed that with that one-handed grab what he can do. And right now, it's hard to tell. either one could end up being a favorite receiver for Bortles.
Absolutely.
So.
Who's your favorite waiver wire pickup this week? We want to know who you like. Do you like Austin Eckler? Do you like Buck Allen? There's John Brown that we talked about last week. So there's a lot of good guys like right now. And not only that, the streaming options too this week, especially at the quarterback position, I think are pretty strong. But we'll get into that. So anybody that you've claimed this week, who's your favorite pickup on the waiver wires? And also, who's the player that screwed you this week? That's always my favorite question to ask. I don't care about who was the hero that saved your team. I want to know from the losers out there, who the hell was the one that screwed you over and you lost. We got a question here from Jesus. Jesus, thanks for checking us out again. Appreciate checking in. Phillip Rivers or Andy Dalton? Who you got, Wookie?
I think it's hard for me to say it since he's my guy, but I think I'd probably go with Andy Dalton here. The Rams have a really good defense, and I feel like this is going to be one of those trap games for Rivers where he's going to wind up throwing 3 picks, get sacked a bunch, might have a fumble. I don't see him putting up too many fantasy points this week.
No, I agree with you, and I mean Andy Dalton's been pretty good. I mean, let's be honest. Since the new offensive coordinator, and the name's escaping me right now, has taken over, he's really been in a situation where he's been damn productive. And people also forget. The weapons that are at his disposal right now. I mean, of course you're losing Joe Mixon, right? But at the same time, you've got Gio Bernard, who becomes probably a running back 1 at this point. I mean, while Joe Mixon's out, and we know what he can bring. He's versatile. He can catch the ball. He can block. He's a pro. And as long as AJ Green, and we've seen what Corey Boyd. Hey, Corey Boyd, thanks for checking it out too. But
Tyler Boyd.
Boyd's first name. I'm escaping it.
Tyler Boyd, right?
Tyler Boyd, thank you. I've got Corey Boyd stuck in my head. But Tyler Boyd's come on here lately. You're going to want to see more from Ross going forward. Eifert's healthy finally. So to me, Dalton is, borderline, top 15 guy in fantasy football.
Well, and it's early in the season too, so he doesn't really have anything that he's not trying to get into the playoffs at the moment. He's not anything like that. It's no big games right now. He's just kind of getting into the groove.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Chargers and the Rams. The Rams have looked knockout solid so far this season. There's got to be a kink in that armor, right? It can't be this good.
I mean, even if a guy like Goff has an off week, you have Todd Gurley to hand the ball off to. And I mean, when Gurley's not getting it going, they're hitting guys. They have Brandon Cooks out there. They have Robert Woods. I mean, and that defense is pretty wild what they've done with that defense. So they might be like the favorite coming out of the NFC right now, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah. What do you think about that, Fredo?
It pains me to see the Rams as good as they are having
I think your mic's on mute there, buddy. No?
Doesn't say.
All
it.
right. I don't know. Get into that thing then.
Yeah, it pains me to
There
see
you
the Rams as good as they are, having snuck out of St. Louis in the middle of the night a few years ago. But yeah, the only solace I can take is that the best team doesn't always seem to win, especially in the NFL's one-game playoff format.
Right. No, yeah, I hear you with that as well. So, let's turn it over now to a few of these injuries and kind of where that's going to lead and how you should back yourself up. Again, we want your comments, your questions, your calls. You can check us out. Give us a call even, 1-866-217-1966. Follow us along at EBSN Online on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Streaming your questions right now on Facebook. Chandra Smith just checked in. Standard scoring. Chris Thompson, who we liked a lot this week on the waiver wire. Lamar Miller or John Brown at flex. I love John Brown in a standard format. I mean, the guy is going to get some touches. He's not going to get a ton of catches, but he's going to get his looks, and that's the most important thing. 4 or 5 probably targets, I'd say. and he's good around the end zone and those long passes. What do you think, Wook? It's Chris Thompson, Lamar Miller, or John Brown at flex?
Oh, I'd be taking Lamar Miller. If you're picking Lamar Miller at a flex, that's a really good position to be in. I think he's 4th in the league right now in rushing yards. He just doesn't have that touchdown, which is the only thing holding him back. But it's kind of the way their games have gone lately is they've been throwing the ball.
Right.
So I think this week they might get a little bit better of a game script going where he's going to be getting a few more carries and he might find the end zone this week. I love Lamar Miller at a flex.
What are your thoughts, Fred, on that? You got one? Chris Thompson, Lamar Miller, or John Brown?
I think that Chris Thompson's probably going to pick up a couple more carries as the season goes on, as Adrian Peterson wears down. But he's doing his damage right now in the passing game, and he's got, 155 yards and a touchdown on 19 catches.
There you go.
That's a lot of catches for a running back.
Yep, that's doing work.
So we just all three of us had a different answer there. I just want to apologize to the person asking the question.
Chandra, so sorry about that. Good luck. James Roy, thank you for checking out Big Game James in the house. Questions, comments, calls. We want to hear from you on your roster decisions this week, trade waiver pickups. Just a shout out. We want to hear from where you're watching. Make sure you're checking us out and following along at EBSN Online. Kyle Farmer, what's up? What do you think about Jarvis Landry tonight? That's tough because you don't know how injured he is. He's going to play. He's active. All that sort of stuff. I do like the matchup for an underneath type matchup, and as long as they can get him the volume, if you're talking about a PPR league, I think that their lack of productivity these last 2 weeks, I think that will change a little bit this week. I think you're going to see Duke Johnson get more involved. I think you're going to see Jarvis Landry get more involved, and I think we'll also see Tyrod Taylor use his legs a little bit more as well tonight. But I think that is it's going to be a tough play, just depending on how injured and how much you believe about what he can do physically. But thanks for checking in on that, Kyle. Daniel Borges, I believe that's how it's pronounced, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Daniel, thanks for checking in. Daniel wants to know Brandon Cook or David Johnson. I'm going to take it's a standard league until you correct me, Daniel. For me, I really feel like this Cardinals offense, it's the NFL and it's terrible. And as long as Sam Bradford's there, I think it's going to be terrible. You got to get, I don't know what you do. Brandon Cook, there's just so many weapons and you just don't know, but he's such a big part of what the Rams are doing that it kind of depends. I really think on whether you're counting on PPR or not in this. If it's PPR, I'd go David Johnson. I think they got to get him off and they got to get him in space, and that's how they're going to do it. They're going to have to throw him the ball. With Cook, I think you're looking at maybe 6 targets or so, and you know what he can do once he gets the ball. What do you think about that, Wook?
Man, I think are we really talking about not playing David Johnson, who's, probably a top 5 pick in every league? That's how bad the Arizona offense is. And I mean, you can't throw the rookie in there against the Bears. They'll just eat him alive. So I feel like they're going to just feed David Johnson this week, and on pure volume alone, he might be the better play. He might get that, short yardage touchdown if he's lucky, and then just pure volume. So I think I would go with David Johnson there.
All right. Fredo, you got a pick on that?
I think right now I'd have to say Brandon Cooks. David Johnson, you're right. He is a top 5 player drafted, every league that I was in. But they're just not doing it. So you got to go with the player who is doing it.
Here's what I would say too, Daniel. You took David Johnson as a top 5 player, I'm guessing, or around there. You got to play your top 5 player at this point of the season. It's week 3. You can't give up on the guy you took number 1 overall. To me, if it's a standard league or a PPR, and you did clarify it is standard, what's the matchup this week look like for Arizona right now? Let me.
It's the Bears.
The Bears, oh, man, they've been flying around everywhere versus the Chargers. Chargers, yeah, boy, I hate this matchup. Man, that's a tough
I think, like I
question,
said,
man.
on pure volume alone,
I'm
I'd be
just going to
going
go with my
David
first
Johnson.
thought. He's your top 5 pick. It's the third week. Play David Johnson. Yeah, that's what I would do. If it's between the two of them. I mean, I don't know how you're keeping Brandon Cooks on your bench. I mean, who else do you have at wide receiver too, dude?
And who else do you have at running back?
Leagues or
Okay, something like that. Man, that's a stacked team. All right, awesome. Keep them coming at EBSN Online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, answering your questions and getting your comments. Want to know where you're watching from, who was your bust of the week that cost your fantasy team if you lost. That's who I want to know too. And also, if you ended up with a huge win and pulled it out late, who was the guy that got you over the top? We want to know those questions. And, of course, your waiver wire pickups, roster questions. We're here to check out everything. Daniel's got one more here. Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen are the other two guys as far as his wide receivers. Man, you're not benching either one of those guys. Tyreek Hill's got an awesome matchup this week. And Keenan Allen, I definitely think is a guy that I would have in over Brandon Cooks at this point. Okay, great. And let's see. What else? Injuries we were talking about. Dalvin Cook in Minnesota with a hammy. He's questionable. We'll end up seeing what happens there. Obviously, Latavius Murray is going to be his backup. I think last week you saw the payoff with TJ Yeldon. If you were able to grab him and put him on your roster, if you were a Leonard Fournette owner, he did okay. I mean, he filled in and got you basically what Fournette got you the week before. But it wasn't a huge play. But I think that's what you'll get from Latavius Murray. You know, you're going to get a guy that's going to be a solid play that's on a good offense. And if you've got Dalvin Cook, that's an easy fix for me, and I would just go right there. Mike checking in. Complete bust for me last week was sitting Matt Ryan on my bench. Mike, who did you start in place of Matt Ryan? That's who I want to know as well. But thanks for checking in and commenting. He's got the Ravens helmet there. All right, you got the Crows. They were hot and then cold. Big week this week for Baltimore, so we'll see where they're at, especially, I think, getting Buck Allen more involved as well now that Kenneth Dixon goes on IR. Of course, you've got Collins. Is it Collins or it's Collins, right?
Yeah, Alex Collins.
Alex Collins,
yeah. I mean, but even his touches have been kind of limited to extent. I think with flex play, especially if you're in a PPR or even a half point, to me, Buck Allen's the better play than Collins at this point. What do you think on the Baltimore Ravens running back situation, Wook?
Definitely, if you're in a PPR league, I like Buck Allen better. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was kind of low on Alex Collins coming into the year, and I've actually liked what I've seen out of him the first couple of weeks. But you are right, though. If you're in a PPR league, Buck Allen's the way to go there.
All right. Hold on a second. We have a trade to break down. I love these things. Here we go. You got an offer, Rick Barber, Fournette, Corey Davis, and Yeldon for Tyreek Hill, Lynch, and DJ Moore. Fournette, Corey Davis, and Yeldon for Tyreek Hill, Lynch, and DJ Moore. I always like the idea of getting one of the top backs, on a good offense that's going to be running the ball a lot with defense. I think as long as you think Fournette can stay healthy, and that's going to be the big key, you're getting your handcuff with him in Yeldon, so that's useful as well. I don't hate that trade if you're on the Fournette end of it. I think Tyreek Hill's, he's going to be great, but there's a lot of wide receivers out there, and there's guys that catch on as you go along. Look at a guy like Callaway up in Detroit right now. Tyreek Hill's very valuable, but to me, number one running back's more valuable as I go through the season. Don't you think, Wookie?
Yeah, I think that trade actually works out for both teams pretty well.
Depending on what they need.
Yeah, I mean, I like getting Tyreek Hill back, and I've said it before on the show. I'm not that high on Leonard Fournette. I think he's hurt all the time. There's something always wrong. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you're getting Yeldon too, or giving up whatever that one is. And I think it works out for both sides. You're getting a top running back on one side, the other side's getting top wide receiver who can do everything. I'd have no problem with that trade on the either side.
Yeah. Let's see. We got a couple other guys in here. Mike got back to me with Brady and Breeze in his league and Newton and Wilson in his 6-man league. So, I mean, you can kick yourself in retrospect, I guess, for Matt Ryan being on the bench. But I guess when you're looking at it before the games, you probably made the right call when you're talking about the long run of things. So don't feel too bad. Just kind of ended up going that way for you, Mike. Thanks for tuning in. Phil Bernstein, Big Ben or Cam Newton, 6 points for every touchdown as well, including throwing touchdowns. Big Ben this week on Monday Night Football. He's taking on Tampa Bay, which has been a pretty decent team this year. But, I mean, that total's 55 right now. So, I mean, and going up. So, I don't know how you can go away from Big Ben, but he is on the road. Okay, so that's a big thing. You get running yards with Cam Newton as well that you're not going to get with Big Ben. And I'll tell you what, Carolina has been pretty damn useful this year if you've had him as a starting quarterback in your league. I don't know, Wookie, what do you think? Carolina against Houday at home. So I kind of like Carolina and Cam at home.
On my rankings here for this week, I had Big Ben one spot ahead of Cam at 3, and I had Cam at 4. So that's almost a toss-up right there. I think, you have Christian McCaffrey working out of the backfield. He had 14 receptions last week against forget who they played last week, but I think he had 14 receptions. But I think I would go with Big Ben. I mean, they're coming out of a lot of internal stuff going on right now. He's going to have a big bounce back game after he put up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns last week. I think he'll have an even bigger game this week.
Okay, yeah, no, so I think I agree. I mean, to me, I don't know. Man, that's a tough call. I like holding on to Big Ben, though, till Monday night, too. That's always a plus. But thanks for the question, Philip. Hope that helped a little bit. Karen Hines Cox asks, Wentz or Garoppolo, Fredo? Carson Wentz or Jimmy G?
I think it's probably Garoppolo right now. They're going to be playing against a Kansas City defense that's given up a lot of points. They've scored a lot of points, but they've given up a lot of points too.
Yeah.
And it's Wentz's first game back. You don't know how much rust there is or isn't going to be.
There's a lot of weapons injured too in Philadelphia, which isn't going to help right now. You got Sproles, who's questionable. Alshon Jeffrey still questionable. So I mean, you're going to get a heavy dose of Zach Ertz and Aguilar. So I don't know, Wookie, what do you think on that one?
I agree. I think you're going Garoppolo there. You also don't know what's going on with Ajayi necessarily, and that KC secondary is kind of banged up as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think either one of them will have a huge day, but I think you go with Garoppolo there.
All right. Thanks for checking us out at EBSN Online. Give us a follow, Twitter, Facebook. Go to ebsnonline.com. We want to hear from you guys, your comments, your roster questions, the decisions you have to make, trade proposals, waiver wire questions, anything fantasy football related. We're covering it this week. Of course, we'll also be hitting on some fantasy basketball, some fantasy some fantasy hockey prep coming up next week. Give you our top 10 for those as we get into those seasons. Of course, we'll be heavy on fantasy football too next week. Don't worry about that. Right here, Everything Fantasy Nation. You can check us out there as well. Okay, so let's get back into the injuries a little bit as we go through them. Like I mentioned, Darren Sproles is questionable right now. Keep an eye on that. Shady McCoy also questionable with ribs. I mean, there's a couple things that play there if he doesn't play, because then you're also maybe fading their defense, and you kind of, one thing always plays on another, and when you're looking at these things, always look at the totals to use as tiebreakers. There's a lot of different ways that you can make that decision, so check that out as well. What you got, Fred?
I was just going to say that the Bills are awful this year. You're probably better off just staying as far away from anybody on their roster as you can.
Yeah.
That's true.
They are so bad.
I don't even know who their backup running back is at this point. Do you, Mike?
No, I have no idea. They might not have one.
Anymore.
It might have been Vontae Davis, and he walked out last week.
Is that right? Wow, damn it!
No,
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
Whatever. Nobody knows that. All right, somebody help us out. Who's the backup for Shady McCoy? Drew Howard, welcome in. Thanks for checking us out. Alex Collins or Philip Lindsay as my running back to full PPR for Drew. Who you got, Wookie, for Alex Collins or Philip Lindsay?
If it's full PPR, I'd go Lindsay. I mean, they're playing against each other. It's at Baltimore. I think if you're getting a full point PPR there, I would definitely go Lindsay there because he's getting more use out of the passing game.
Yeah. And, I just talked a little bit, too, about, what my thoughts are with Alex Collins and Buck Allen over there in Baltimore. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that situation. So I'm with you. I think Philip Lindsay is the guy to play this week from Buffalo. Thanks again, Drew, for checking it out. We found out who is the backup. There it is. Daniel has it. Chris Ivory is the backup. So,
I still wouldn't want any part of that.
What was that, Mike?
I said I still wouldn't want any part of that.
Yeah, you're right. God, the Bills are bad.
There's some other injuries here I just saw pop up too. Indianapolis is pretty beat up right now. Marlon Mack, T.Y. Hilton, and Jack Doyle all still didn't practice today, and it's kind of starting to look like they might not play on Sunday.
There's an injury, Jack Doyle with the injury, but there's a question at tight end now in Indianapolis. You get Eric Ebron coming in there, taking touches away from Jack Doyle, who we thought was going to be the guy, and Ebron was going to be maybe just the second guy coming in with some pass situations, that sort of thing. But he's been, so far, Andrew Luck's target in the end zone. Now you got Doyle hurt a little bit. I mean, Ebron's out there in probably half the leagues still.
I'll look that up right now, but it probably close to it.
In the leagues. I mean, is it time to move on Eric Ebron and take him seriously as maybe a top or starting play each week at tight end?
See, I don't know. After all those years in Detroit, he had Matt Stafford there, who's fantasy king, and he just never really got it going. And now you're talking about Andrew Luck. Is he going to keep it up or not? It remains to be seen. I wouldn't be jumping all over him yet, but I'd keep an eye on it.
All right. Nick Barnes joins the show. Thanks for checking in, Nick. Jarvis Landry or Deshaun Jackson at flex this week. Nick, I'm going to guess that it's a standard league, unless you correct me here while we're talking about it. But to me, we talked about Jarvis Landry right now and where he's at with his health. If it's a PPR league, then we can start talking about Jarvis Landry. If it's a standard league, I think the play is definitely Deshaun Jackson right now, especially with the way Fitz is just flinging the ball. That's the way I think I would roll right now is with Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, as hard as it is to rely on him week to week, or at least throughout his career, how he's been like that, I think right now you would go Deshaun Jackson there for sure.
It is a PPR league, so with that, does that change your mind at all, Wookie?
Maybe I don't know. I don't think so. I think as long as you have Fitzpatrick back there, I'd still go with Jackson. Maybe when Jameis comes back, that'd be you'd switch back over to Landry there.
Yeah, I do too. Because again, you look at this game with the Browns. It's a Thursday night game. You've had 4 days to get ready for it. You're coming off the road, and the total of this game is like 39. So this thing has like 2016 written all over it. And so to me, I think I would still go Deshaun Jackson. He's been too hot, and he's a touchdown just waiting to happen. Jarvis Landry, as we know, isn't exactly a touchdown maker at times. So thanks for that question, Nick. Fredo, what do you think about this one? Karen wants to know, and this is a great question that we need to talk about for a minute, because what the hell do you do with Le'Veon Bell at this point? Do you keep him? Do you trade him? And let's look at it from the other way. If you don't have him right now, is this a good time to go out there and maybe make an offer for Le'Veon Bell? What do you think, Fred?
I think that if you're a team that has Le'Veon Bell, muddle through as best you can, try and stay in the playoff hunt, because he's coming back week 10. He's not giving up a year of free agency.
I agree with that.
If you're a team that does not have him and the team that does have him is struggling, make a trade offer.
Yeah.
They realize they have to make the playoffs to win the championship, so it does no good if they're 7-2 when he comes back.
I agree.
Or 2-7 rather.
Yeah, I think that especially if you feel pretty strong about your team and that you're going to make the playoffs, I wouldn't mind overpaying just a little bit to get Le'Veon Bell on my team for a playoff run. And if that's the difference in having Zeke Elliott and Bell, I mean, that's not a bad combination to go into the playoffs with. Your thoughts on the Le'Veon Bell situation, Mike?
I think if you have him on your team, I know some leagues use that IR spot where you can put a guy on the bench, that's hurt and he doesn't take up a bench spot. If you have that available to you, definitely put him on there. If not, I don't know that I would be going out to trade for him because I don't know that they're going to really, if he comes back, I don't know how much they're going to use him if James Conner keeps it up the way he is. And I mean, I know it probably sounds crazy, but I'm not that high on him. That the way everything that's coming out of it, you just don't get the feeling that he's going to be that Le'Veon if he comes back this year.
Yeah, you know what? There's definitely something a little smelly coming out of the Steelers locker room. There's just something not quite right, and I feel like it's almost maybe a little bit of a player revolt against Mike Tomlin. Like, I don't know if he's holding the respect of this team right now. And the way that the Steelers and Steelers management has handled this, the way the defense is performing and what they're asking the offense to do each and every week. I mean, they're playing simple cover 2 football and don't have the cornerbacks to do it with.
I mean, Big Ben had over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and they got beat.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
you can't have that happen at home, and so here you are, 0-1-1, and you're on Monday Night Football. So, I mean, if things don't go well this week for them, I think you're going to have a lot of upheaval in not only the Steelers team, but that fan base. And you know how into it and rabid they are. They're going to want some answers with that kind of start for sure.
Well, and especially if they get lit up by Fitzmagic this week. I mean, that's kind of like it's like a perfect storm right now. Like you have this dysfunctional Steelers team going on the road to play on Monday night against. You would say the story of the year if Patrick Mahomes wasn't out there, but one of the stories of the year in Fitzmagic, it's his last game before Jameis comes back, and they're going to have that whole thing going on. So he has a lot to play for. That's going to be a good Monday night game.
Joshua Fendrick checks in here. Josh, Hogan, brother, Demaryius Thomas, or my guy Quincy Enunwa. Did I say it right that way that time? I never say it right. Quincy Enunwa. I get another N in there, huh? Yeah. Quincy Enunwa. Now I got it? All right. Hogan, Demaryius Thomas, or Quincy Enunwa. I hate Demaryius Thomas this week. Case Keenum is a dog, and I want no part of him being on the other side of throwing me the football. So he's out immediately. I think if Josh Gordon plays this week, I really think that'll help Kevin Hogan and the underneath stuff like I talked about a little bit earlier. I think James White is a nice pickup on waivers wire if he's out there for you. I think he's going to start getting a lot more looks out of the backfield, catching the ball. And as far as the Jets go, we were kind of talking about the Browns game. It's a 39-point spread. Thursday night, not a lot of time to game plan. Rookie quarterback on the road. To me, I would go with Hogan in just about every format, and especially since it's PPR. I mean, he's going to get the most volume, I think, as far as looks as well. What do you think?
I think I would probably go Hogan as well. It really depends tonight in the Browns game who's going to cover Enunwa. I mean, if he's going to have Denzel Ward on him, that's going to suck for Enunwa. But I would say Chris Hogan for this week. And going forward, though, this could be one of the last weeks he really gets some good work because they're going to get Josh Gordon worked in. You're going to have Edelman back. I think this would be one of the last weeks you're firing Hogan up.
All right, yeah. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see the dynamic there with the Patriots and how that works out again. Gary Likens checking in. Who scores the most points tonight? I'm going to tell you, Gary, who's going to score the most points tonight. I'm going to look you in the camera, and I'm going to tell you it's the Cleveland Browns that are going to score the most points tonight. What do you think about them apples?
I think the Browns are winning tonight for sure.
But if you're talking about a player tonight, off the top of my head, you know what? I'm going to go with Duke Johnson. I think that they're going to make a concentrated effort to throw him the ball at least 5-6 targets. They really haven't given him the chance on the ground. I think you're going to see a little bit more of him as a ground option when he's in there to keep them honest. Carlos Hyde really hasn't been doing much. They can't run block. So you got to do something to extend the run, an extension of the run, to allow the passing game to open up. And I think that's kind of those bubble screens and that sort of stuff. That'll get it done at times if you can't line up and go right between the tackles. What are your thoughts on the player with the most points tonight, Mike?
Well, I sure hope it's not Duke Johnson because I just dropped him in one of my leagues yesterday. So please don't be Duke Johnson. But I think I'll go. I think I'm gonna go out there a little bit with it and go with Robbie Anderson, the wide receiver for the Jets. I think if you have Ward on a Nunwa, you might see Robbie Anderson get loose on a couple deep balls, and if he takes them to the house, that's gonna add up.
All right, the off guy tonight then. All right, very good. Let's see. Gary Robinson asked, Bilal Powell tonight in a PPR or Derrick Henry? Fredo, I want to hear from you.
As somebody who owns Henry in a couple of standard leagues, I'm going to say that you should probably go with Powell because I'm about to drop Henry. He doesn't seem like he has the skill that he flashed in college.
No,
he's like a lot of Alabama defensive players. They're capped out as far as their skill level gets when they get to the NFL.
Oh, I think running backs. I think Nick Saban just beats his running backs into the ground at Alabama. And
you're probably correct about that too.
To me, their skill sets are straight up and down. You know, it's not east-west with Alabama running backs for the most part. And you got a guy on there like a Deion Lewis that's versatile and has been able to run the ball in the past as well. So to me, I agree. Derrick Henry is out of there, although I don't love Bilal Powell either. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go Bilal Powell there as well. But also you got to remember this is the Crows' homecoming game here. He spent all those years here in Cleveland. They might try to feed him tonight and get him some work.
Yeah, I love the fact that they're the Crows. It's like my favorite thing to call the Ravens, but damn you, Art Modell. Still haven't forgiven you.
And you never will.
No, I never will. Fredo, I got to hold you accountable here real quick because we allowed you to make a pick against the spread last week.
I've been dreading.
Yeah, you were. What were you going into this?
I was going into the game. I was 4-1.
4-1, and now you're 4-2.
I'm 4-2.
You decided to take the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and get it up to a field goal, and they only lost by what, 14 to 17 to 24.
I think it was. I don't know what it was. It was awful.
It was
a lot more than that.
Awful. It was one of those games that made you go, "What happened?"
That's right.
Because there was no logical explanation for it. There really wasn't. Rutgers has been a team that's been good against other Power 5 teams, even on the road.
Again, they played Washington long enough. That's playing on Rutgers and the Big Ten in general. Every one of you stinks in the Big Ten except for Ohio State, Penn State. And we'll find out about Michigan State and Michigan and Wisconsin. Shame on you
Michigan
for losing
sucks.
to the Mormons at home. That was bad. Okay, and then so you've got one more pick. We're going to try to get you one more to get in here. We're coming up on the top of the hour here in about 5 minutes. We'll keep it going here for a few more minutes. We want to hear your questions, comments. Everybody, thank you for checking us out. Thank you for interacting. We love it. We want to hear your trade proposals, any sort of waiver wire pickups, roster questions, all that sort of stuff. That's what we're here for. We want to interact and talk to you guys right here at EBSN Online and Everything Fantasy Nation. Okay, Mike, let's go ahead with your streamer of the week. This is a guy that we either like for fantasy football or a guy that you could pick up, or I mean fantasy football, for daily fantasy football for DraftKings or FanDuel or Yahoo or wherever you do your daily. Or a guy that just has a great matchup for this week and you've got a roster spot. You may want to use them if your guy has a bad spot. Who you got this week, Mike?
All right, so in DraftKings this week, we've already talked about him quite a bit, but I like Ryan Fitzpatrick against Pittsburgh, 6,000. He's at home. 6,000 is, it's not too low, but it's lower than the other top quarterbacks. And I also like Calvin Ridley this week at 3,700 playing against the Saints. He found the end zone last week, and I think he might have another pretty big week this week, especially for the money. 3,700. That lets you go out there and get somebody big.
Okay, I think those are both good choices. Obviously, my guy's Austin Hooper this week. You've got a situation where Julio Jones is questionable. Devontae Freeman's not there to eat up backfield touches. You look at Austin Hooper, second in targets for the Falcons so far, with 28 so far in 2 games. I mean, it's not chopped liver what we're talking about here. And then 27% in the red zone. So, I mean, you're talking in DraftKings, he's, let's see here. I should have had his price ready. There he is. Yeah, I mean, he's dirt cheap this week. He's all the way down here. How am I missing him? Somebody go ahead and keep talking here for me while
you're looking for that, I'll throw one more in for you. The Bears defense this week playing against Arizona, they're 3,500. So I know that's about middle ground for defenses, but you're not going to find a better one for 3,500.
You want to save some money? Go get some Austin Hooper at $2,900 and save on your flex. And you could probably play him at flex and then play another Gronk or Ertz. I mean, with all the injuries in Philadelphia, Ertz is going to be used a lot. I love using the double tight end option in fantasy football or daily fantasy football. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Like how you just said Gronk, he hasn't had 2 back-to-back weeks like he had last week in the last 7 years. It was like 2011 was the last time that he had 2 back-to-back clunkers like that. So look for Gronk this week to have a pretty big week against Detroit.
Okay, absolutely. And then I guess two more if you want a couple value quarterbacks to go ahead and stream. Blake Bortles has a great matchup this week against Tennessee, and I love Blake Bortles. We've talked about it. He's underrated as far as his legs. He could score touchdowns on the ground for you. He's got weapons. He's got a great defense. And the matchup's awesome. And then on that vein as well, Ryan Tannehill against the Raiders. Another guy with legs. I like that option of being able to have someone who's versatile that can get you a touchdown scrambling for 22 yards or whatever it might be. So those are a couple of those other ones. Mike, you got anybody else you want to talk to? And then we're going to let you go and let Fredo hop in and give his quick pick on the way out.
Yeah, one more. You were just talking about Tannehill. I also like Kenyon Drake this week. I think he's going to have a pretty big week as well. Playing against Oakland. Oakland hasn't been too hot against the running backs, so look for Kenyon Drake to have another big one.
All right, Mike. You got anything else to say? I'm going to let you go here.
No, it was a good show, guys. I'll get out of here and let Fredo get his pick in.
All right, here it comes, the Fredo pick of the week.
See you guys.
Fredo's pick of the week. Sorry about last week, everybody. Kansas getting points.
Get into that microphone there, Fred. Get into that mic. Get it up.
Kansas giving points. Talk into it. Kansas giving points last week didn't make any sense to me. It still doesn't make any sense to me, and we saw what happened with it. So the makeup pick is New England -7 against Detroit this Sunday night. In 2015, New England is 7-2 after a loss against the spread, and they will not be happy. Plus, Belichick has also got an incredible record against his former assistants in the first time out. So there you go.
That's going to be your pick. That's the way to go.
That's my pick of the week.
I'm going to come back over here to Mike. He's got a message for you, Fredo. He likes that pick. All right.
I'm glad somebody else likes that pick.
All right. Congratulations. Yeah, that's good. Wookie approved. All right, everyone. Thank you for checking us out this week. Appreciate all the comments, the likes, the shares at EBSN Online, everything Fantasy Nation. We'll be back right here next week, 2 to 3 o'clock, to take your questions, your comments, your calls on rosters, on trades, on pickups, whatever you guys want to talk about. We'll talk about it, and we'll give you a shout out. But until next week, I'm Jake. He's Mike. At EBSN Online. Say goodnight, Fredo.
Good night, Fredo.
I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says.